is the future of broadcast news in Canada?
There are concerns that local news may be doomed to electronic extinction. That's coming up next, so don't go away. It's a daily ritual for millions of Canadians. Come home from work, eat dinner, watch the news. But what would you do if your local station either wasn't on the air or wasn't producing a supper hour newscast anymore?
Here in Hamiton, the community is anxious about the future of this television station. CHCH is now part of a strategic review by our parent company, CanWest Global Communications. But the problems that we're experiencing are only the tip of the industry-wide iceberg. Will broadcasters be able to provide the same levels of news and local programming facing an uncertain economic future? And how will the CRTC deal with the crisis?
Joining us now in Toronto, we have Lise Lareau, the National President of the Canadian Media Guild, and next to her, Peter Miller, a former member of the Canadian Association of Broadcasters, currently CEO at S-Vox. Peter, do you think the CRTC is willing to at least consider allowing broadcasters to cut the amount of local news they produce?
I think they have to. I mean, the precedent has already been set a little over a year ago. TQS, which was a local struggling station in Montreal, was sold, and the new owners were able to cut local programming. It's just a matter of time. The business model for conventional television is under threat, and the only way it's going to be made sustainable is to, in a sense, just change the model and allow at a sustainable level of local programming.
Does sustainable mean perhaps no local content? Could you envision a day in Canada when a city or region like Hamilton, Niagara could actually see their station either go dark or simply no longer be able to reflect what's going on in the community?
Absolutely. If the public doesn't get involved and our politicians don't get involved, that will happen, because the CRTC is not going to stop it. The fact is, you know, the business model may have been slightly flawed, but we have to figure out ways, and they are doing so south of the border, figuring out ways to finance local news. Local news is a precious, precious commodity, and it's a public service, it's a public gift, and I think it's got to be funded that way. I don't think we can just leave it up solely to a regulator to figure this one out.
Peter, if we left it up to the bean counters at all of the big networks, they would simply slash local news. We all know that. It's cheaper to and much more profitable to import American programming. Is there a way to provide more balanced coverage, to provide some local content, some Canadian content, and still make a profit?
Absolutely, and quite frankly, I'm not as pessimistic as Lise is. I think there is a sustainable level. Let's look at your station. Your station currently has obligations to produce 36.5 hours of local content a week. That's an extraordinary level. Very few local stations across the country have that level of obligation, and quite frankly, the only reason it's there is because 8 years ago when CanWest bought the station from WIC, it promised that level. 8 years later, it's appropriate for it to be reconsidered. The more appropriate level, in my view, and the level that other stations have, is about 15.5 hours. And the mixture of what is local news versus other local content becomes up to the broadcaster. So, in my view, there's absolutely a sustainable level. There's absolutely a business model, but right now, I have to say, I think CanWest's problem, particularly with your station and some of the other networks, is that the level is too high.
Lise, do you think the CRTC is doing enough, or should they be doing enough to make sure that the public is being served? And let's again take this region as an example. If they don't have enough local programming, how are they going to know what's going on in their region? And is it up to the CRTC to make sure that that happens?
It is up to the CRTC, and what I wish is that it would get out of the realm of big conglomerates and the banks to figure out who buys the station in Hamilton, Victoria, etc. What's going to happen now is it's going to be, they're trading chips in basically in loan guarantee discussions. And that's not a way to fund the public airwaves. So I would say what we should be doing is talking about putting these licenses up for grabs, not making them part of, you know, other sort of conglomerates buying, you know, one station and another. That's what got us into this problem to start with.
Peter, if we adopted that philosophy, though, you will hear networks suggest that no independent station can stand alone. You must be part of a big network in order to survive, in order to share the costs of running programming, of buying programming.
Well, there's a two-part question there. First of all, I work for a small independent broadcaster. We have stations in Vancouver and Winnipeg. We have a sustainable level of local programming. It's a tough business model, but I happen to have confidence that we can make it work. So size is not the only factor. But just to comment on what Lise said about, I think she's suggesting expropriating the property of CanWest. That's just not on the cards. That's not the way the system works. There's a bunch of factors in play here. One is the economic situation, and one is, admittedly, some perhaps not so wise business decisions on the part of CanWest in terms of its deal with Goldman Sachs. But at the end of the day, again, I guess I'm not a pessimist. I think the stations will survive, whether under CanWest or under new ownership. I think they will end up having sustainable levels of local programming, because I actually think local broadcasting has a future. I look down the pipe 5-10 years down the road, and I see specialty television as being more challenged than local television.
Why do you say that?
Because local television is a franchise where you're guaranteed carriage throughout your market. You have access to retail revenues, which are very, very lucrative if you know how to tap into them, whereas specialty television is just going to get more and more fragmented. Excuse me. You're going to have more and more digital services, and with people having more and more digital carriage in their homes, that business, I think, is going to get tougher and tougher.
If I could interrupt, though,
Yep.
I wish the CRTC would listen to that, because I also think there's future in local broadcasting. I'm not pessimistic about local broadcasting. I want it to thrive. What bothers me is that no one is talking about it. No one's talking about the fact that it's disappearing from our airwaves.
Well, we are here.
I know.
And that leads to my next question: what can the public do? I mean, we can sit and listen and complain. Can the public actually do something, and not force the CRTC, but make them, you know, aware of the situation and that something should be done about it?
Well, to be frank, the CHCH is one of the most open administrative bodies we have in Canada. I mean, and again, it is, of course, a bureaucracy as a government agency, and if you don't know how to get into it, it feels daunting. But let me tell you, it's one of the easiest agencies to get involved in. They have a very user-friendly website, crtc.gc.ca. Look it up, search CHCH license renewal.
Lise, why are you shaking your head no?
I'm shaking my head because, look, we know that in this period leading up to these license renewals, the big guns, the CAB...
CAB doesn't exist anymore. CAB's just been slashed.
Yeah, but the CAB, when it did exist until the end of December, met with the CRTC chair several times. So did CanWest, so did CTV. They would not hear from us or the small players in this. No, there are so many... The CRTC is only an open body if you're a big broadcaster.
And I absolutely and categorically reject that.
Okay.
That's a conspiracy theory that simply is ridiculous.
All right, we'll investigate that theory, and we'll see it in the single bull theory. Lise, Lareau, and Peter Miller, thank you so much for joining us today. Most interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it for another edition of the show. Hope you liked it, and if you want to contact us, please do so by email or voicemail through the information on the screen. And we do appreciate your comments. They don't just make our show, they make our show better. Thanks for allowing us into your homes. So long for now.